Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here, yeehaw, and we just had a patch, our first named patch in Pokemon Unite, ranked Series 20 balance patch, Scorching Waves, which I, for one, absolutely love. I would love to hear from you in the comments, by the way. I think it's really cool that they named a patch and sort of have it themed around an idea. I also have people saying that they think Scorching Waves is a little nod to the next Pokemon coming to the game. Ho-Oh, I would love to hear your thoughts on both of those in the comments. First off, do you like kind of having a name and a theme? I really do. I think it's pretty cool and different. And then also, do you think this is a reference to Ho-Oh? But on to what's important in this video, who won and who lost in this new patch. And there are some big winners, some really weird situations, some head scratchers that didn't seem to make a difference either way, and Duraladon. Where to begin? Let's begin with some of the winners, shall we? Slowbro has a beautiful piece of hollowware coming out. Slowbro is one of the better defenders in the game. Probably not the best. I think Trevenant is probably the best, maybe followed by Crustal, Umbreon. There's like a conversation of like 4 defenders, right? Trev was the best, followed by kind of like Crustal, Umbreon, Slowbro, all in this pack. And now Slowbro received multiple buffs. A buff to Slack Off, an early move. This helps a little bit in the early laning phase, but isn't that consequential. A buff to Scald, which is actually really nice. Now when you hit enemies with Scald, they're going to get a 60% attack stat reduction as opposed to 40. So this is a big counter to enemy teams that have a ton of attack-based Pokemon. And then a Surf cooldown from 8 seconds to 7. I can tell you from playing Slowbro that they are a huge winner in this patch. It is because they have hollowware coming out for sure, and it actually might be Surf that is the biggest winner. The uptime on it feels like you have this move constantly, especially with Surf Plus, giving you multiple knockups in a fight. I think it's actually kind of the biggest buff for this. But then again, depending on the enemy team comp, if they have a lot of attack-based Pokemon, Scald might just be so unbelievably brutal. In general, huge wins for Slowbro. We might as well keep the train moving with another Pokemon that is getting a beautiful piece of hollowware soon, and that is Mimikyu. Mimikyu got buffs to Shadow Claw, the healing from Shadow Claw. I want to point this out because while I was streaming the other day, people were like, my god, the damage on Mimikyu, they buffed it crazy. It's not damage, it's just healing on Shadow Claw. It is a cooldown reduction on Play Rough and Play Rough Plus. These are nice buffs for a Pokemon that it was already doing well. This kind of feels like it got very similar to the Slowbro treatment. It's already doing well, and now it's getting another nudge. I don't think either of these situations take a Pokemon that's doing insanely good and veer it into the completely broken tier, but it will make both of these a lot more competitive, a lot more powerful, and if you thought they were A, they're probably A+ or something like that right now. Maybe even making their way towards the S tier, but again, these are kind of slight nudges for both of these Pokemon. Little, you know, a little buff here, a little buff here that just makes it better all around. A nice patch for Mimikyu for sure. A Pokemon that I really didn't expect to get many changes except for Trick Room. Rest in peace, Trick Room. Let's talk about a patch loser right now, and that's going to be Trevenant. Now, Trev's still nuts. We are just talking about kind of a damage change on Woodhammer, a damage change on Curse, a little bit of cooldown on Woodhammer as well, going from 8.5 seconds to 9. These aren't massive changes, but they are chipping away at Trevenant's supremacy. I still think Trev will probably sit atop the pack as the best defender in the game because its utility is unbelievable. Like, what it can do with Hornleech and Woodhammer is so disgusting, and that Pokemon is so difficult to take down. Now, however, Slowbro is giving it a run for its money. Another patch loser clearly is Hoopa. Now, this isn't a huge change to everything going on with Hoopa, but it does kind of make Trick Phantom Force, which slyly was insanely good, a lot worse now. So the healing got a 50% decrease on Trick and 60% on Trick Plus. You used to be able to Trick Phantom Force, have your allies go through that portal and get a massive amount of HP recovery, and now they have changed that considerably. I don't know if this makes the build unplayable, but I kind of think it means we're going to go back to Hoopa mostly running Hyperspace Hole because you've lost a lot of the utility versatility of Trick. I would have loved to see maybe a Trick nerf like this. Like, fair enough, that's a lot of healing. Now we're also going to buff perhaps Shadow Claw at the same time, so you're setting up a situation, no, sorry, I said Shadow Claw, Shadow Ball at the same time. So you're setting up a situation where you're taking away from one aspect, Trick Phantom Force, but you're giving to another, Trick Shadow Ball. Then again, they just gave it a little bit of a nerf, so it did lose in this patch a bit. Let me talk about a Pokemon who didn't really win, but didn't really lose. This is kind of a, in this patch, and we've got a few of these. Let's start with Scizor and Scyther. Scizor and Scyther got a cooldown nerf to Swords Dance from 7 seconds to 8.5 seconds. And this is not really a relevant change, in my opinion. I was playing Scizor earlier. It's great. Still, it doesn't really change the dynamic of the fights too much. It probably had just too much uptime on Swords Dance. The way I was seeing it in a match, you are going to have to be a little more deliberate when you Sword Dance and when you engage, but you kind of always did, depending on what was going on with the enemy team. You can't just jump into 5 enemies at once all the time, right? So I've found that while this change is a slight nerf, it's just a slap on the wrist, and if you're playing Scizor or Scyther with Swords Dance, I really don't think you need to be worried about this change. Another slap on the wrist, of course, is Miraidon. Miraidon got a 5% damage decrease to Electro Drift and 10% when it's empowered. I don't think this is enough at all to really change the landscape of what's going on with Miraidon. In a way, it's kind of a patch winner because it didn't get a huge nerf, but at the same time, I would like to play a little bit more with it before I say like, oh, this was actually significant. I feel like maybe there are going to be some borderline KOs it would have picked up before that it no longer can. However, I don't think these are massive Miraidon changes at all. Let's talk about a patch winner that just it won, but it wasn't. Okay, let's talk about Garchomp. Yes, Garchomp won a little bit in this patch. It has more tenacity, so it means that crowd control effects are going to hinder it less. Earthquake and Dig are going to deal more damage, and Dragon Rush got a cooldown. That's actually probably the biggest thing, is the Dragon Rush cooldown, maybe a little bit of the tenacity. I love Dig, especially Dig Plus on Garchomp. I think it's hilarious how high you knock enemies into the air, but Dig Earthquake is still a little bit of a mess. It's not as good as Dragon Rush, Dig isn't, and then Earthquake can get canceled so easily in a game with so much crowd control. I just don't see this as doing anything that kind of moves it into becoming a super viable build. In fact, I think don't even give me the damage increase on Earthquake. Give me like a defense buff on Dig and make Earthquake unstoppable or something like that. Those are realistic changes that could make the build a lot better. Right now, you've got a build that's fun, will probably do well at lower ranks or against uncoordinated teams that don't have a lot of crowd control. But in general, Garchomp is still going to be a dragon Pokemon. We've got to talk about a big patch loser here, but I don't think it's as bad as it seemed, and that's going to be Tyranitar. So Tyranitar got its base stats lowered a little bit, its like top end attack lowered a little bit. It got Sand Tomb damage reduction taken from 25% to 15%. So when you were inside Sand Tomb, 25% of damage was like just flat reduced when it was hitting you. We also have a decrease in the damage of Stone Edge and a decrease in the damage of your Unite move. From playing Tyranitar, I feel like the only real significant part that I felt while I was playing it was the Sand Tomb difference. That is probably the most significant nerf Tyranitar received here. I actually do think it's a pretty healthy patch for Tyranitar. It's still going to be really good. Maybe too good slightly still, but this is going to shave down some of its more ridiculous moments, and it will, I think it's going to lower its win rate a little bit as well. You're just going to see less opportunities for this Pokemon to kind of go as nuts. They still could probably tone it down a little because this is going to be a top tier pick in uncoordinated play, like outside of 5 stacks, but I do think that these are reasonable nerfs for a Pokemon that was kind of crushing it. Let's talk about Mr. Mime, a winner from this patch, an unexpected winner, the healing build on Mime. I actually love this change. You're going to get a little more move speed when you're tethered with Power Swap and a big increase to healing. I've been playing it for the past patch, like the past day essentially. I've had multiple streams, but I've been playing it a lot. Mime is great. I love this change. It feels like now pretty much everything on Mime is very viable, and it's viable to run Mime as sort of this tanky healer that sits with one of your carries and tries to make some crazy stuff happen. And I've had a lot of games like that, very solidly healing somewhere between 50 and 100k in a lot of matches. So I think this is a big win for Mime. Let's talk about some patch losers, and they're big losers because they really just haven't been mentioned, and it feels like they should have. Charizard. Charizard has not been touched in a long time, while Venusaur, a Pokemon that is already crushing it, receiving a buff. We'll talk about Venu in a bit. A Pokemon like Water Bear. Water Bear really feels like it's outclassed by so many of these all-rounders. I'm just surprised we haven't done anything with this Pokemon. Without question, these two are losers. Now let's take a look at some kind of surprise winners. I think all of the EX Pokemon outside of Miraidon, Mewtwo, Mewtwo Y, Mewtwo X, and Zacian Y, I think all of these Pokemon are, not surprisingly, but they are winners because they weren't touched at all inside of this patch. We're kind of trying to figure out, or I think the game is trying to figure out how they're going to balance these EX Pokemon, and it looks like they're just going to leave them very, very good. So EX is still doing great. Speaking of winners, I just mentioned it before, but Venusaur got another buff. I don't think this buff is monumental. However, I do feel like it's going to be nice in those situations where the enemies don't have a lot of dive on their side, and you're able to set up big time Sludge Bomb solar beams. I think that's going to be very fun. Also, Sludge Bomb Petal Dance is really, really fun and dumb, and I honestly have great results with it. I don't know what to tell you. I win with the build a lot, but I do think this is going to be nice for Venusaur. Sludge Bomb has been lacking behind Giga Drain for a lot of different reasons, but it just doesn't do enough. And now it does a lot more. In fact, there were matches I was playing, tankier Pokemon, and I could feel the difference between, getting hit for a moment with that Sludge Bomb and then Solar Beamed, as opposed to what it was like before, for sure. Another winner, of course, is the Balance Patch Pokemon. Did I say Balance Patch? Okay, I meant Battle Pass, but you know what? It's actually pretty funny to call a Battle Pass Pokemon a Balance Patch Pokemon because they often get buffed when they are the star of a Balance Patch. We do see this happen with Blaziken. It was already doing great. Nice little buffs across the board, a little extra HP recovery, and a couple cooldown moments. I actually didn't really ever notice Blaze Kick or Focus Blast needing a cooldown reduction. I almost feel this was just like a nice way to sprinkle some love to their Battle Pass Pokemon. I don't think this makes Blaziken profoundly broken. It's kind of like the Mimikyu buffs to me, where it's like this thing was already doing well and you're just kind of buffing little elements to it. That being said, Blaziken's doing awesome, so a big win for Blaziken. Here's a bit of a head scratcher, kind of in the lines with Garchomp. It is good. Absol got some buffs. Pursuit damage when you're hitting an enemy from the front, the opposite intent of the move, and then a Psycho Cut blade damage increase, which honestly I don't find to be that significant. I think what people are noticing when they're seeing Absol doing well right now is just that Absol has been a delete button for a long time. Barely anybody plays it, and it can get shut down by some annoying crowd control effects on the enemy team. So it's kind of like a high risk, high reward Pokemon. I really don't feel like these changes are super significant. I don't. However, I would love to see the exact numbers. Maybe I'm wrong on Psycho Cut. It feels pretty dang similar to me, but I did get some nice like Psycho Cut into Unite move delete button moments. So it might have been increased enough to allow that to happen more. In general, this is a win for Absol, right? But I don't think it's a massive change. Leafeon actually finally got a nerf, and that's going to make it a loser. This has been a winner patch after patch, not only because it's been getting buffs, but because it never gets nerfs. Solar Blade is getting an early nerf, very reasonable, and your move speed is also getting a nerf. I'm actually a little heartbroken by the move speed thing. I love like the high move speed on Leafeon, but I do understand needing to tone this Pokemon down a little bit. That being said, it's never been a dominant force in ranked ladder. It's just something that's done well in tournament play. We'll have to see if that continues. I know a lot of players were not even running Solar Blade. They're running Aerial Ace, Razor Leaf. So we'll see if this changes too much for Leaf, but it did need a nerf and it finally got one. Now I want to talk about kind of the biggest winner, craziest, one of my favorite things about this patch is Duraladon. Duraladon got the closest we've seen to a kind of a rework in like the entirety of the game almost. Like some Pokemon have had moves reworked in some really cool ways, but they are essentially saying we are changing the way we want Dura to participate in battles. They don't want it to be a Ray Ripper anymore. They want Stealth Rock to be way more potent. They want Flash Cannon to be really useful. Like across the board, Duraladon got really big changes, and I think almost all of them are probably for the better. Its rip on Ray is way worse than before, but that's healthy for the game. You don't want a Pokemon whose whole concept is like, you've played for 8 minutes, now I'm just gonna leave it up to a coin flip because this is what I do. Now the Unite move is actually a little bit better at fighting your opponents. Like it has a pushback to it. It deals increased damage at the beginning. I saw like Duraladon use it against me earlier and got a nice secure with it. And then Flash Cannon is actually good. Like for the first time ever. Flash Cannon's been tragic, you guys. Flash Cannon is actually pretty dang good. So, I don't know. I'm really excited for them to give more Pokemon the Duraladon treatment. In that way, I feel like this has been one of our better patches lately, because they're stepping outside the comfort zone a little bit of, oh, you know, these Pokemon are just like a little buff here, a little nerf here, a little buff here, to like, no, we're actually reworking some things in the game that just fundamentally don't contribute to either an exciting game environment or having a Pokemon that performs pretty well. Duraladon always performed pretty well, but it was kind of troll for the game, right? It's literally, it's an auto attacker who walks up to objectives and turns everything into a bit of a gamble for both sides. And now they've changed that to be more of an auto attacker with a crazy good stun in Stealth Rock and something that actually fights a little better. So Duraladon for me is the biggest winner of this patch. It's like the most exciting thing about this patch, and there was no way I thought they were going to make Duraladon the star of this patch. As always, when you look at a patch, you have to think about the Pokemon that they could have done something with. Things like Zeraora, maybe, Goodra, Greedent, Greninja, Gengar. A lot of Pokemon like this could definitely have received some love. I think Lapras was a little over-nerfed a while back. But in general, I think this is a nice patch and one of our better ones as of late. Let me know who you think won and who you think lost in the comments, and let me know who you think they should have done something with and they just didn't touch at all. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll have more videos coming soon. I'll have a big stream tomorrow as well. We're going to be doing a ton of Unite, and I think we'll be playing Honor of Kings also. Love you guys. We did it. Buff Charizard.